Good morning, everyone. Anthony Tharp. It's May 26, 2023, and just making another insert, another video based on current events and what's going on within my community, the Jamaica community, and the global community. So, good morning. Thank you for taking the time to again listen to me as I voice my opinion and outlooks and what I think or how I think we should proceed in working to empower people and our country. I say empower our people first because the people are the most important factors in any country, in any economy, and therefore the people must be the priority. So anything we're deciding on doing or implementing in our country must have an effect, a positive effect on the majority of people. And the strategy and hope is that we will work to ensure that every single Jamaican has a protected right to be able to advance themselves economically, socially, in harmony with living the best lifestyle and having the best relationships within themselves and families, so that Jamaica can assert itself or raise itself to a position of having one of the highest standards of living in the world. And so I'm just going to jump right into this because I realize that this is an extensive topic and we won't be able to discuss everything in one video. Little suggestions here and there, and I'm hoping that you will share. I've been asking people to subscribe or share. I was told to stop doing that and do ask, because if I don't and people don't share the information with other people, then we can't engage and we can develop a vibrant community out there that will discuss these issues and work towards fixing them. So I'm asking you to, thanks for coming to the channel. Please take the time to review the video before you even subscribe. And if you deem the information important and something that should be shared, please share it. So please subscribe and share, and so that we can grow our community and therefore become a voice in effecting change. And that's important because I am advocating that we build a network, a networking mechanism that will reach other bloggers out there, or influencers, or YouTubers, whatever you want to call them, out there, so that we can make the most effective amendment to our Constitution and implement the most effective and forceful management strategies and rules that govern how our politicians operate. So again, hopping right into it, I was listening to bloggers last night. Sorry, Mr. Stevens' program for a while, and then Mr. Tavares. Mr. Tavares, I didn't get all the programs, obviously, because the broadcast about the same timeline. But they had, there is important issues. In terms of I'm going to hop right into Mr. Stevens' show. I didn't catch all of it. I catch the tail end of the show, and he had his guest, Queen Ifrica, I think, and they were discussing a number of issues. Now, they were combative, but that's Mr. Stevens' style, and it seemed that Queen Ifrica is pretty firm on her beliefs, so nothing wrong with that. I'd say they were combative, but weren't hostile to each other, pretty much, which is good. You can have a vibrant, active, healthy discussion, do all the shouting you want, but at the end of the day, there is civility, and that's what we want in society. So one of the topics I stepped into when I got there was the rights, and I'm calling it the rights issue. And the emphasis was on the gay community, and so it got pretty heated. But as I've always said to you, the takeaway from any discussion is not the vibrance of the discussion or the presenters or how they express themselves. What's important is the core topic that was being discussed, and that had to do with homosexuality and the Constitution, and pretty much who gets a seat at the table to discuss where this Constitution and where our country is going. Now, my humble opinion is that everyone has a right, a human right, a civil right, to state their concerns or beliefs or outlook for the country. As long as they're born Jamaican, they're of Jamaican heritage through their parents, or Jamaican citizens through their parents, because a lot of people forget that by virtue of our Constitution, any child born abroad by fathered or mothered by a Jamaican is a Jamaican citizen. Hence, our population is significantly larger than a lot of people think. And that's strength. That's good for us. And it's a policy that we should maintain in the Constitution as a right. Because just like how you can divorce yourself from your ancestry, whether it's African, European, Caribbean, other, so we shouldn't divorce ourselves from our citizens, whether they're generational. In fact, we should expand it and create avenues for Jamaican descendants abroad who want to claim citizenship, to give them an easy path to that citizenship just by virtue of being born Jamaican. If they make that choice, I want to make that choice, we should make it easy. Because not only does it give us a greater number of voices in the world, but it gives the economy the ability to become strong. And I hope you're seeing the connection. The more people we have as citizens, the better it is for our economy, whether they're in Jamaica or not. Because if we have citizens that are consciously Jamaican and cherish their Jamaican heritage and practice, then it's going to be good for the economy, good for our culture, good for us, period. We become a recognizable force in the global community, which is important, because a lot of small countries are losing their population by virtue of age or migration. And in fact, there are countries with only a handful of people living on there. I'm pretty sure in short order, those countries are going to be just memories on an old map. Nobody there, nobody going there. And so for us, we can't afford to have that happen. And why we can't afford it? Because as I have said before, we're Jamaicans. But before we are Jamaicans, we are children of Africa. And words are important. And my philosophy is we need to assert who we are. We need to reestablish who we are and not just assume and take on the mantle of whatever people put on us. And as I've said in the past, both privately, publicly, even though I will loosely use the word Africa, that's not who we were. That's a name that was thrown on us by Europeans. And we've accepted it. And it's just like our surnames. We're lost in the mix because most of us don't know our surnames, our real names. We're going according to names that were thrown on us by plantation owners or slave owners, and we assumed those names so that we could identify, or they could log us where we were registered or where we used to be on plantations or in the community, what areas of the planet or Jamaica, for example, were affiliated with. So we got names based on that. Some people obviously were the descendants of plantation owners and Europeans, and some of them might have, gotten their ancestral names, but for the vast majority of us, we don't. And I'm saying that to remind all of us, not to diminish ourselves, but as a reminder that it's important that we discover who we are, because it makes a big difference in your whole psychological approach to life, your whole motivation, it tells you a lot when you know who you are. And so it's important that at some point we find a way to rediscover who our ancestors really are, where they came from. And that itself, whether you know this or not, is going to be significant to our economic growth and development throughout the planet. And if you're a forward-thinking person, you'll get to where I'm going on that. For example, our tourism sector, we're pursuing all kind of different branches of tourism, health tourism, you name it. But one of the sectors of the tourism market that's still there untouched, literally untouched, which creates and could create, not only will create opportunities for a budding entrepreneur who sees it, is tourism between our ancestral lands and us, our people. Developing a tourism market that focuses on identifying who we are here, who we are in Africa, who we were in India, who we were in Europe, who we were in South America, and that becomes something that a lot of people will want to pursue. You can see with the whole ancestry thing that's going on and those companies doing genetic research, how they're growing fast and people are vested in those areas. I think people get so obsessed and involved with it that they continue doing their own research. So from a futuristic perspective, that's one of the areas of the economy we can develop. And frankly, I've been putting together a strategy with that. And I'll discuss that hopefully later when we start working on the developments we have in Jamaica. Primarily the developments in Montego Bay, because we have a green light on some of those developments. As I said, we're just working through some problems or obstacles, just paperwork, technicalities, and I want to move forward without hesitance once we start running. So those projects will offer Jamaicans a major opportunity to invest in their country, invest in themselves, and secure their financial as well as political and ancestral future, their children. So there are opportunities coming and are there. And like everything else in the universe, and I heard somebody say it on a documentary that was being done about the Anunnaki and prehistory, 2,000-3,100 years before Christ, that one of the concepts they have about our existence in the universe is that the thoughts we have and the thoughts we gather are not necessarily thoughts that's original, unique, but they're thoughts that's embedded in us. We've been pre-programmed, or there's a giant mechanism out there, call it the God factor or whatever you want to call it, that beams these ideas into our heads. So while I'm saying this, I'm pretty sure there are hundreds of thousands of people out there who have similar ideas, and it's those persons who act on it that's going to take advantage. So that said, our country is the first step in moving ourselves forward, and we can't just be getting out there shouting, making unnecessary noise without concrete and solid plans to move forward. So going back quickly to the discussion on the whole homosexuality thing, and when I'm raising that it's a constitutional matter. My whole outlook on that is that every person on the planet has a right to live, has a right to life, and it's not for one group of persons to determine or dictate how that person lives and survives, as long as that person isn't creating havoc within the population or the planet that destroys other people's lives. So we have to approach these things really carefully and consider both the medical issues, the sociological issues, as it comes to people who want to practice that lifestyle. And I say people want to practice loosely because There are people out there who say they were born genetically that way. They have that disposition generally because of biology and genes. They have other people who, I think, by socialization and upbringing and exposure, adapted that lifestyle. And some of them do it for economic reasons. Like everybody else, people who become prostitutes don't necessarily want to do it, didn't grow up that way, but some people made a choice. This is how I'm going to survive, by prostituting myself and generating an income. And from a moral perspective or ethical perspective, the vast majority of us turn up our noses against that kind of lifestyle. And I'm saying that to say this. I use that example to say to everybody out there who has this hostile approach to homosexuality and all of that, that the fear, and in some cases it's the concern and the disgust of the behavior, because we've been educated and programmed religiously and otherwise that that's unacceptable, that's not normal. And in fact, it's not the normal way of perceiving male, female. You know, naturally, we don't seem to be born with that disposition in some cases, but in others, we know people have biological issues. They have persons who are born with two genitalia. What we're going to do, chop them up, throw them out, and say they don't have any human rights? No. So we have to approach the whole discussion around individuals like that who happen to be Jamaican and have that want to live that lifestyle and see how we deal with it. So just coming up with a bombardment policy to destroy them and get rid of them is not the route to go. It would be no different from how Europeans classified us or perceived that they have a right to determine what happens to us. They used to use us for sport as well. They used to chop us up, stretch us. They abuse us, they beat the hell out of us, and then decide what they wanted to do us, list us as stock animals. So 1/3 human. So coming from that background, we have to really sit and consider, how do we approach this question? Because it is in reality a question that tears traditional society apart. But there are other things that have torn society apart, and we have to sit down and decide, how are we going to deal with it? So that's the thing I'm saying to every person that's listening to this, and please share it, that don't just get upset, don't just get angry. Sit down and let's figure out this thing. Because like everybody else, they're human beings, and they deserve the right to life, they deserve the right to live. Now, how we regulate them is another matter. So I'm suggesting that if we approach it from a medical perspective, and this person is not a danger to society otherwise, then you can have legislation that simply states that you don't openly practice that thing in public. And the reason I'm saying that, and people might say, oh, you're talking about civil rights and human rights, but then you're mentioning regulating behavior in public. No, that's not a violation of human rights or civil rights. We don't allow heterosexual couples to go in the street and openly have sex on the pavement or the bench, because not only is it morally and ethically upsetting, because especially when you have your kids, young people influenced, and they get the wrong impression that this is the kind of thing we need to do to express love and all of that. So we regulate it and say, no, you can't do that in the public domain. You go to your private residence or place and you do whatever you want to do in the privacy of your home. So we can regulate stuff like that. It's not something that's going to create hostility. Or we're saying to persons who want to practice that alternate lifestyle, whether it's biological or sociological, whether it's inherited genetically or it's something that they develop because of their socialization, then we can determine to say, listen, you want to practice that, do it in the privacy of your home. And if persons invade that privacy and then go and publicize it, and we charge those people for violation of people's privacy and peeping Tom laws, and so that everything is kept in private. But it goes really deep and more concerning than that, because what about children? These people might have kids or children in the home. They have neighbors with children. If they're in the privacy of their homes and they don't have children, that's fine. But what do you do when they have kids? What do you do when these people are professionals and they go to school and they're educating children and then decide they want to share their life experiences with those children? If you're a teacher and educator, one of the fundamental part of teaching is that you share your experiences. So can we trust these people to go into a classroom and not train our kids to accept their way of life, which confuses kids, normal kids, and so we throw them in this upheaval where they're accepting of it and they recognize the value of people's civil rights and human rights, but then they become confused. How do you justify exposing a 3-year-old, a 2-year-old, even a baby who is seeing and taping and recording everything like a blinking computer? They're recording everything that's going around them, and then we don't expect it to have an impact. So for those who are gay, homosexual, transvestite, whatever you want to call yourselves, you have to be concerned about that as well, and you should be. You shouldn't be selfishly thinking it's okay for me to just go in and do this in front of children who are influenced. As I said, we dub our young to be young adults or adults, and they don't become consenting adults until after the age 18 in our case, I think, and even 21 in some cases, and depending on the particular area of that's concerning to them. So we have to look into that, and I'm going to go to Florida, Ron DeSantis and his laws concerning a lot of these questions that pertain or deals with educating our children. And he passed a number of laws limiting what could be taught in school in terms of relative to homosexuality and transvestism and all of that kind of stuff. And there were a lot of outcries. My outcry was the law should be passed because we can't have people going into school, creating books, creating curriculums, and teaching young kids to be accepting of any lifestyle that contradicts what's natural to humanity. Homosexuality is not a natural thing. We know this. But while saying that, if this is an evolutionary track that these people have been put on, then we should not allow them to force their lifestyle on anybody. And so I am one of those people who object to this viral production of the lifestyle and then throwing it out there for everybody to absorb, even when it's offensive to people who have their religious belief and their own social way of living and family lifestyle. Why would you be producing and forcefully putting that into people's faces when they have their children, their family can't sit and watch a movie without that being pronounced? They start putting ads on TV with males predominantly, and I want you to study it yourself. Predominantly they have males, and typically it's black males being projected on screens and in movies and ads about various products as homosexuals. And I say predominantly black males and minorities. And there's a psychology behind that, because the idea is they're selling the acceptance of this behavior, and by using quote unquote minorities, blacks who have been through the struggle of racism and prejudice, they will help to convince, first of all of us to say, you know what, we went through that, let's not put other people through it. And what they're doing is completely different from what we went through in terms of our incarceration and oppression as a captive people. The fact is, as I say, it has to do with alternate lifestyles. And if this is what you choose, or biologically you're destined to have that lifestyle, practicing it in private is certainly not something that should be objected to. You know, it protects you, it protects society, it protects our belief systems, and we shouldn't be fighting or pushing something like that down people's throats. So the discussion last night on Mr. Stevens' show was that I think the young lady was saying we should have limits on that kind of thing as it comes to the Constitution. I beg to differ. When we say limits, and maybe I should ask her to clarify, she should clarify if she hears this video. We shouldn't limit anything as it comes to the Constitution. What we need to do is sit on every topic that's raised, every concern that's raised relating to our country, our citizens, our human rights, our civil rights, how we live, what we can do, what we can't do, must be detailed in the Constitution. And it can be done to protect everybody. So here we have a group, a very minority group in society, in the Jamaican society and globally, that are objecting, and the majority are objecting to that kind of lifestyle being openly practiced. So all we do is write a constitution that simply says, guess what, you want to go that route with your life, that's up to you, but you can't be out in public in places that cater to regular folks who don't want to practice that lifestyle or have their kids exposed to it. You can't be in public carrying on or demonstrating that that's the lifestyle you're pushing. And I'm not talking about two people of similar gender walking down the street. No, I'm talking about the overt exhibition of sexuality on the street as it pertains to the humans of the same quote-unquote visible genetic structure. So in short, we can and we must deal with it in the Constitution at this level. So we don't have fights going down the road where we're distracted with these issues when we should be focused on building our economy and on the quality of life. Because that's what's happening, with a lot of our governmental activity. We have these elected officials who go into parliament and they sit there and they discuss all these issues and can't focus on issues that's going to unify and build a strong nation. So I said, yeah, in the Constitution dictate those things, those rules. And one of the things we can do is to ensure that each of these persons who live this way, if the Jamaican people and the majority of the people in Jamaica are opposed to this kind of lifestyle and put limits on it, then we should also have policy developed in government that creates opportunities for each of these individuals who are now given the opportunity to be trained, to be educated, and make sure they're educated, make sure they're trained, and then set up programs where they can be given a priority to go to countries that accept this lifestyle, that practice this lifestyle. So there's no hostility. We merely develop treaties and programs, offer them training so that they can qualify for jobs. For example, a lot of these countries need medical personnel, they need teachers, they need doctors, they need truckers. We train them and give them the tools they need to be able to get to a country that offers protection and the right for those persons to practice openly. I don't see anything that's wrong with that. I mean, it must be fine-tuned, obviously, but I've just given a suggestion that will not allow these individuals to leave the country, still be Jamaicans, still be able to vote, still be able to come back. No hostilities, nobody attacking anybody in the street. Children who are of straight parenting don't have to be exposed to that. Heterosexual couples don't have to be exposed to that openly. And we put limits on what can be broadcast in our country as it relates to that. They have countries all over the world that ban certain things in the media. And that's why we have standards and boards that monitor the media and what you could put out there. So just like how we ban certain songs, and so we could simply say to people who produce movies, for that movie to be shown in this country, that the majority of people object to that kind of lifestyle, you have to edit that movie or make one special for us. Or better yet, we develop our own movie industry and market those videos abroad, home and abroad, building our own industry and economy. So there's that economic opportunity that exists there as well. So we don't have to be hostile and go at each other and be told, oh, you're homophobic, or you're homo this, or you're homo that, and you fear these people. No, it's not a matter of fear. And in fact, that's one of the essential problems I find with the whole strategy being used by organizations that represent people who say they're gay, want to be gay, and want to live that way. And as I said, that's your lifestyle. You want to live that way, that's up to you. You shouldn't push it in the faces of other people, though. You shouldn't. That's just damn wrong. But one of the things is that they're always having an agenda of tying that lifestyle into civil rights and human rights of African Americans, Africans in the Caribbean, Africans all over the world, and use that as an excuse to justify them being allowed to operate openly. And as I said, do it in the privacy of home. If people try to invade your privacy or expose you and say you're this, you're that, when you're doing stuff in the privacy of home, then the Constitution is written to protect you. That means those persons will be peeping toms and go and spread, expose your private lifestyle out there that the Constitution is saying is protected in the privacy of your home. Then those people are charged with violation of the constitutional right that you were given under the Constitution. So again, the Constitution is extremely important, how we deal with these things. And that's one of the things I wanted to mention today, because I think it's important. We can't skirt around it. We can't rewrite the Constitution and not deal with it. Because again, we don't want to be wasting our lives and time with politicians going in there and special interests, giving them money, and people who travel abroad and don't have that lifestyle end up on a flight where somebody tricks them and then grab them and put them in prison because they're objecting to that lifestyle. That's what happened to Mr. Banton, Buju Banton. He was set up, and a lot of entertainers have to go through that. But if it's a national rule and policy that the country does not embrace that kind of lifestyle, the majority of people, then everybody is protected. And guess what? If for some reason countries out there impose their will or try to impose their will on our artists and all of that, then they don't go there. They stay at home and perform, or go to other islands and areas and perform. And so people travel. People will leave those destinations and come to a concert in the Caribbean, come to a concert in Europe. So there are ways to deal with those things, and where we don't have to be pressured because of politics from other people's jurisdiction on people who don't believe in that. And even the US, they need to adopt policy that protects everybody, not just keep pushing this agenda because it's politically expedient and it's politically popular and it's politically what we need to see now. That's the trend. And so we develop harmony around the world. As I said, countries that offer protection to people should open their doors and allow them in. And I don't advocate anybody abusing or hurting anybody. These homosexuals have the right to life. They have the right to be happy, to pursue their economic empowerment like everybody else, and love who they want to live. Love. It's as simple as that. And we shouldn't be so caught up that we're going to be out there pressing for oppression and suppression of these people when we want to live our own lifestyle. We have enough distractions in our lives, and we should just focus on those things. Excuse me. So the Constitution has to deal with everything that's being raised in controversy in our Constitution, so that It's embedded there. And I said, this is my opinion. However, it can be fine-tuned, and I'm pretty sure nobody wants to spend the rest of their lives being chased by cops in the gully. That's what I hear is happening up in Kingston, forced to go capture homes because they can't get residencies because of who they are. Nobody wants to go through that, and we shouldn't put people through that because it reflects on society generally, and it creates controversy that's going to cause us to get into areas that we don't need to do or get into as civilized people. So the Constitution, that's one aspect. The other aspect, as I mentioned yesterday and before, is that the lead person that we select through an election process to oversee the government and ensure that they're doing what we put in law in the Constitution that needs to be done to manage the country and manage our assets. Those people, the Parliament, the PM, is that person. And one of the things I'm saying now is that I notice a lot of bloggers, they keep riding the fence. Some of them may genuinely believe this, or they're just patronizing because they don't want to seem like they're hostile to the Prime Minister or his cabinet. However, anybody that's going to come out now and try to justify the actions of what this government has done is just being hypocritical. The fact is, the people of Jamaica have said they don't want it. The people of Jamaica say it must be returned to where it was. The people of Jamaica are saying if you don't like the pay you received when you got in there, then you resign and move on. There are other people who take it. And so I hear pundits out there talking about, oh, you know what, the Prime Minister, they probably didn't even think it through. They thought everything through. They just didn't respect the people or the constitutional rights of these people, or their right to determine their government and their right to determine where they go as a people. And the Charter of Fundamental Rights and Freedoms that's embedded in the Constitution. And we have to make sure that those things get back into the Constitution, because I hear one of the things that they're proposing right now, the body that's talking about constitutional reform, is to pull a lot of those rights that's embedded in the Charter of Fundamental Rights and Freedoms. Why? Why would any government want to deny people their rights, especially people who you hired to work for you? So, you need to pay attention to what's happening to the constitutional reform. You need to play a role. You need to assert yourself and insist on rights that's already written and rights that you might be thinking that should be written, and get it out there so that people can pick it up. What you say, somebody else will pass it on, and before you know it becomes part of the discussion. It gets into the Constitution because it makes sense for the nation. So consider yourself a very critical and important factor in this whole debate, discussion, and then the implementation of a constitution that's voted on by the majority of the people. So those bloggers who are out there trying to find excuses to minimize what the Prime Minister has done, you need to stop distracting people, and let's focus on the real issue. The real issue is that the Constitution must control and dictate how these people act, behave, what decisions they're making are based solely on instructions that are already written in the Constitution. So the main event is not, again, as I said, that the salary that these people gave themselves. The main event, it shows us that these people believe they have too much power, believe the people who elected them don't have the power or the right to tell them or determine, or don't have a right or a say in what they do. That's the important thing that this whole salary thing has brought to light. And coincidentally, it came to light just in time for us to recognize that don't rush this constitutional change. Sit down, let's work on a timeline, discuss it, get people involved, and then we move, then we vote. And therefore, after that process, we can now focus and concentrate on developing various economic strategies to enforce the thing that's embedded in the Constitution. The Constitution is there to protect everybody, give people the ability to build themselves socially, economically, and otherwise equal opportunity across the board. So then that's what we do. But we don't go around wasting time creating distractions for people and patronizing these politicians as if, well, you want to really say they're messed up? They're more than messed up. And as I said yesterday, any reasonable person doing this would resign, would move on. But because they have contempt for the nation, for the people, and they don't have any respect for the people, then that's why they're still there. That's why they're unapologetic. That's why they decide they're not going to pull it back, but they're going to find a way to circumvent, to come back with a new proposal. And as I'm saying that, it just popped in my head because one of the things I wanted to mention was I heard the leader of the opposition now saying that what they need to do is appoint an independent body to determine what they should get. No, we need the Constitution to be drafted to have a permanent working body within a mechanism of government that does this long term. And after the Constitution is drafted and voted on and approved, and this body is set up, that's when we have people reviewing what politicians are getting, what they should be getting or what they shouldn't be getting. Maybe some of them need a pay cut. Maybe the Prime Minister needs to get his 9 million cut down to 6 million or 4 million. Because in truth and in fact, in private industry, top executives, a lot of them don't get that kind of money in this country. And people thought, oh, the Prime Minister, because he's the Prime Minister. No, the Prime Minister works for the people. And if you're in private industry and private industry wants to pay you that and more or less, we accept it. And you take those jobs knowing that's your salary and that's what you're getting. So no Prime Minister or Member of Parliament or government should be allowed to get in there and make any kind of policy change, implement any committee or panel that's going to decide on what money you get, when in truth and in fact you have the influence over those people again, because you're the one selecting these people. Now it has to be a mechanism that's put in the Constitution, that's voted on and approved before any further discussions on this whole salary thing. That thing should just be stopped. And I say stop because the people say it must stop. And it's not up to the politicians to determine that we're going to hold on to it or we're going to do this. And we're only going to be obliging the change if we deem it so. So again, it's going back to the whole abuse of power. And because our Constitution does not protect us in that regard, we have this constant plight of fighting issues that hold us back as a people. So I want to thank you for taking the time. There are some other issues that we need to address as a priority, like, for example, defining land policy in the Constitution. Should we allow government to overtax people in terms of property taxes when the properties don't have income generating potential? Should we develop policy around coming up, how do we tax people based on property rights, based on their employment status? Those are things we need to discuss in serious forums and not be distracted with these political games and gimmicks that these people play. So land ownership policies must be developed. Our environmental agencies must be effective, and we must decide how we're going to protect our environment. I heard people talking about people should get land because land is the way to wealth. That's nonsense, because our land space is limited, and so we need policy that people can have a right to own property, but we can give away land. We can't just constantly give away land. Enough land is out there in private hands that's sitting idle, and so we need to develop a real estate market that becomes a vibrant market where people can buy, sell, trade lands. But we need to implement policy that the environment and our natural resources in terms of forestry and lands are protected. And in fact, we need to develop national parks that protect these lands so people just don't go in there and constantly cut down and destroy the environment, because when you do that, we're destroying the water, we're destroying our air, we stop the mining operations that we're not benefiting from, like bauxite. We're not. We're undermining the country, making little off the thing, and we're destroying our clean air or water, and eventually that leads to medical issues that the country now will have to face, meaning more taxation against our own people. So those are the things we need to focus on and get persons who are talking about this constitutional reform to focus on, and so that we develop those policies and have them in place before we do anything else within the economy. Then the whole maroon relationship, we need to deal with that. We need to deal with, do human beings and Jamaicans have the right to air, water, and a protected environment? We certainly can't live without water. They say after 10 days, no water, you're dead. Air. But yet we have policy in government that if people don't pay a water bill, then guess what? They're up the creek. And it's a creek that starts with the S. How are you going to tell a people that they can't get water for their basic needs unless they pay for it? So that whole thing has to be rewritten and drafted, and a structure developed where people are guaranteed even a minimum amount or maximum amount of water, and then a billing process after that. Commercial enterprises that use water, yeah, they need to pay a bill. But ordinary people who need water to live must be guaranteed that. You can't take air from people and then say you're not harming them or their rights or their human rights or civil rights. So why are you going to withhold water? So yeah, the government has to play a role in ensuring that people are guaranteed these things. And so rather than focusing on salaries for politicians, let's focus on these matters. Don't just follow the world because developed countries charge people for water. It's a violation of human rights. As I said, people need a maximum amount and a minimum amount that can be structured. It's all maths. And after that point, yeah, you could build them. So we need to look at those things and embed them in the Constitution, so we don't have one government and a temperament coming in and then making changes to that to oppress people and say, people, if you can't pay for it, we're going to lock you up. Because as I said to you yesterday, is that we have this preponderance in the Jamaica culture that was handed down from the British and from our colonialists, that if you can't do this, then we're going to lock you up. If you can't do that, we're going to give you lashes. You don't have that right. And we need to take it out of our Constitution and stop threatening our people. So the whole maroon relationship and sovereignty, we have to discuss that in detail. We don't have a right to dictate how the Maroons live or what they do, because they're an independent nation. That's a given. And whatever Andrew Holness wants to think or sprout or spew about on his shift, as I said to you before, even me, a humble person, will say to him, he needs to step off with that kind of attitude. You don't have the right to dictate to an independent party or person or a nation what they're going to do or how they're going to live, what they're going to do with their property or not do with it, because you think you have the right to go in. Just like the salary increases, you don't have that right. You don't have this right either. And it's only an agreement between the Maroons and the Jamaican population that can develop a policy or programs that we work in harmony to empower ourselves. We're the same people historically and culturally. We come from the same place. So I want to thank you for that. We have to end discrimination. We have to put policies in place that benefit everybody and protect the nation, and not just absorb what other people are doing. We can't just adopt a political system from another country. We are unique people. Everybody knows Jamaicans are unique. We're not like everybody else. So we have to build our country, our constitution around those belief systems and cultural practices so that we remain a strong, unique, motivated, and sophisticated people. Thank you very much, and we're looking forward to a response. As I say, share so other people can get on the platform, subscribe so we can keep growing and work to empower each other and build the best life possible. So thank you. Hug yourself, pull your loved ones close, and know that you're an asset to all of us. You're valuable, and your input is as important as any other person. Thank you.